Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a terrible security guard trespasses me from my own company's property because he thinks I am homeless. I am actually the owner of the business and I am rich. Here is what happens when you mistake your boss for a homeless person. Let's dive right in. You know what I hate? Stuffy, tight and itchy suits. I've always felt confined by them and awkward. I mean, I will wear one when necessary, like meeting a client or something, but for the most part I don't actually need to wear suits and I don't see the need. You're probably wondering why I brought this up, and well, it's because I am the owner of a pretty popular local shopping mall. So when I said I meet with clients, I really mean shop owners that want to open their business in the center. That in itself involves sitting around a boring meeting room, listening to the business owners pitch as to why they should be allowed to rent space. I have rarely refused and have recently managed to streamline the whole process with an online application process, which basically means I don't ever need to wear suits unless inspectors are planning to visit. I come into work in my jogging pants most of the time or denim trousers and a shirt. Yeah, I know, I'm one of those guys. People at work rip me for it all the time, but I don't mind. The only thing I care about is being comfortable. Some days I do actually look like a homeless guy, loitering around the shopping mall, but most people in town know me, and there are stories of how I am actually a millionaire homeless guy. It's not far from the truth, and I do own a nice house with my wife and a handful of kids. I think it's fun to sit on the bench outside rolling a smoke from a battered tobacco pouch and ragged papers. Watching all the people look down on me only to find out that I'm the owner when they go to inform security. I think the mall is popular simply because of that fact. Anyway, it has caused some issues in the past, sure, but not so many as to be considered an actual problem. As I stated before, I do get the odd person inform security that there's a homeless guy loitering about outside. I love seeing these people's faces drop when the security guy informed them that I'm the actual owner and manager of the shopping mall. I always hear them say something like, "Oh well, I'm not shopping here again," but I always see them a week later. I give them a smile and a wave and they always act like we were best buddies all along. I once had a Karen spend an hour shouting at me that it was not okay for homeless people to be hanging around decent people. It was like I was an insult to her very existence or something. The sheer entitlement of the woman was unbelievable, or is it classist? I'm not sure. She was shouting and hollering, gathering quite the crowd around her. She acted as if seeing a homeless guy where she shops somehow sullied her very shopping experience, or reduced the value of her hairspray that was on sale because no one in their right mind bought that stuff. She called over every security guard that passed by, which was most of them, having heard the commotion. They saw me and just stood around laughing, trying to explain to the Karen that I was in fact the owner. Of course, Karens are always right though. She even threatened to call the police, which would not have gotten very far at all, as I was pretty close to the local officers. You had to be when they would come over once in a while to pick up shoplifters. Anyway, the Karen got escorted off the premises and given a lifetime ban for her scene making. So yeah, my choice in personal attire has caused a rift or two down the line, but I'm not gonna change my habits just because a few people cannot handle someone in upper management walking around in a moth-eaten coat. I love that coat, I've had it for years and it's amazingly warm and comfy. Also, there was one incident, however, that really made me think that maybe I should change my habits. Look, the part I was playing, so to speak. It was around Christmas time a year ago. I was at peak homelessness, hundreds of layers of scarves, gloves, hats, the full works. I really did look like I should be standing around an oil drum fire, sharing a whiskey with my fellows. It's normally this time of year that we hire extra security staff. I'm sure I don't have to explain why that would be necessary during the busiest time of the year for retailers everywhere, with it being Black Friday and Christmas. So it would stand to reason that there are several extra faces about the mall that don't recognize me in my full comfy getup. Normally this would not be too much of a problem, they would catch me, ask me to move on. I explain I'm the owner, chief of security would come down and verify, and then we would all go on our own ways, laughing about the mix-up. Not this one guy though, who I will refer to as Security Steve. This Security Steve we got on was so into his role as security, you would have thought that he was guarding Fort Knox. He used to come into work wearing assault vests and bare pepper spray, plastic cuffs which we don't encourage, the works. Normally, I would commend his enthusiasm, as well as ask him to calm down a little bit. They are there to deter thieves, not scare away customers. So anyway, I was outside having a fresh air break when security Steve comes up behind me, slaps a hand on my shoulder and tells me that I am trespassing on private property and that I needed to move. Which is technically true, it's considered private property with an open invite to the public. That right can be revoked with a few simple words along the lines of "You're no longer welcome here" and such. It's a common misconception that Karens always forget about. Anyway, I turned to security Steve and tried to tell him that I'm the owner of the business. He can see that I'm about to be argumentative and cuts me off before I can say a word. "Sir, you are disturbing the other customers. If you don't leave now, I will have to detain you and call the police." I remember what he said word for word. He was very professional and quoted right out the security handbook. He was just a little bit too enthusiastic. He was young, and once again I tried to tell security Steve that I was the owner, and barely 2 words get out of my mouth when he is whipping me around and detaining me. We generally don't do that here. It's best to get thieves to come on their own accord or let them run so long as we secure the goods first. CCTV is all over the place, so we just pass the footage to the police and let them deal with it. It is to prevent my security guys getting into risky situations. So anyway, he cuffs me, has me down on my knees and calls in backup. I am left kneeling in the snow for about 5 minutes as security Steve is doing a rather poor job of reading me my rights and telling me how badly I messed up. The other security guys come around and they see me in the snow and just start laughing their heads off. Security guard Steve is confused to say the least until one of the other guys tells him that he caught the owner. I have never seen a lad blanch so quickly. He almost went as white as the snow as he is taking off the handcuffs and insensibly asking if I was okay. It did not help that I was acting like the monster boss, telling him I was gonna have him and he was gonna regret what he did. I let him stew for a few days while I decided on a suitable punishment. I identified a problem and decided to handle it in the best way possible. No, I did not start walking around in a suit like I should be, and I definitely did not change out of my super comfy clothes like you would think. Nope. Now, during induction training of all new employees or when a new shop opens in the center, it is security Steve's sole responsibility to ensure that they know who the owner is. He now walks around with a laminated picture of me in his pocket and he will come into the introduction training class, holding up my picture and loudly declaring, "This is the owner, not a homeless guy." And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you enjoyed this funny story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post a comment if you wish to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is titled, "I Ruined the Holidays." This slow burn starts a full year and a half before my plan came into effect. So earlier in the year, my dad quite sensibly suggested that with the size of our family Christmas party, we should skip a generation with gifts to ease the financial strain as the extended family grew. At the time, I was struggling with my business and athletic career, and my wife, then girlfriend, was working on her second master's degree, so I suggested names from a hat, but he wanted to spoil all his grandchildren. I said, fair enough, I will chip in for Omar's cruise and buy gifts for my step-siblings, but don't expect anything too grand. The dramatis personae for that Christmas party, me, 28 years old at the time, heavyweight mixed martial arts and strength coach, aka small-time athlete working a day job to barely make rent in addition to training full-time. Martha, stepsister, 40-ish, an aging mombi whose only assets are starting to sag too much for them to be assets anymore, leaving her with no other definable personality traits. Then Jane, my oldest niece, 12 years old, stepsister's daughter. Imagine the most vapid teenager stereotype you can and multiply it by 1000. The next one is Tim, my oldest nephew, 9 years old, stepsister's son, living proof that you're never too young to be an a-hole. Robert, stepbrother, 36, formerly cool dude who gave up on life when his kids were born, years later would gain back enough willpower and gumption to physically assault his wife Tammy. 6 bro's daughter, sweet and shy girl, terrified by my mere presence, the wisest of the bunch in my opinion. And then there is Bubba, 7 bro's son, a generally nice kid who at this time was partway into evolving into an a-hole after being constantly told to look up to and emulate Thing 2. So anyway, Tammy has brought a Nintendo DS and all the kids are struggling to see/play it together, so I foolishly offer to loan them mine to lighten the load. Tammy agrees to share with Jane and Bubba agrees to share with Tim. Having stupidly deprived myself of my means to escape social obligations, I go to the living room to acquire that much older cure for not wanting to deal with other people, which is alcohol. Not even having had time to pour a dram, my trained ear picks up from the kids' room the unmistakable sound of one human being pummeling another. I politely suggest to Robert that he might want to go have a look, but bro has not given two damns about anything about 7 years, so he waves it off and I go investigate. I walk in to see that Tim may be an a-hole, but he is not untalented and is managing to strike, shove into a wall and kick Bubba all at the same time, while attempting to play my DS with his other hand, having decided his turn began the moment I left the room. Jane has simply wrested the S from Tammy, who is now sitting in the corner crying. I shout for Martha, informing her that if she doesn't get in here to break things up before I count to 10, I would have a stern conversation with them. She then turns up and separates the kids and I retrieve my DS. Instead of giving Tim a lesson on sharing and not hitting people, she proceeds to berate Bubba, the kid who was beaten, for not simply giving up the DS to her little piece of crap and making her son look bad. Jane simply lets out a teenage sigh for the ages and tosses the other DS into the crying Tammy. I then excuse myself from the party, thanking whatever gods may be that I don't have to provide gifts for any of those kids. 6 months later, my firm belief in atheism is confirmed as bro calls me and this conversation ensues. Robert: "Hey OP, while I really appreciated the gifts last year, you should really get something for the kids this year instead. Christmas is all about the kids after all." Me: "No, I turn up to chat with you and Dad and Oma, and I really don't give two damns about the kids." Robert: "That's a mean thing to say about my kids. Don't you care about them?" Me: "You cared about them so much that at the last party, you could not be bothered to break up a fight where your son was being beaten bloody." Robert: "Tim is a good kid. Martha said he just had a bad day." Me: "He was literally beating your child. You didn't put pics on social media for a week because of the bruises. If Tim were an adult and had that kind of bad day, I would have a stern conversation with him and convinced him peacefully to lay on the floor until the police arrived." Robert: "Well, Stepsis and I were talking and we think you should buy stuff for the kids next year instead of us." Me: "Well, I'm happy not to buy you anything, but I'm not getting crap for the Martha's little craps, especially when she encourages that behavior." Robert: "Well, if you're not gonna get something for all the kids, you shouldn't get anything at all. It's not right if you don't treat them equally." Me: "Done. Now, I'm sure they wish it has been this simple, but unfortunately it wasn't, and I certainly wouldn't have written such a long-winded story if that were the payoff. So thanks for bearing with me so far, we are almost at the end. A few months later, about 2 weeks before Christmas, I get an email from my dad with links to various toys, mostly from Toys R Us, which still existed at the time, and when I call him back to ask what that is all about, this conversation ensues. Me: "Hey, what's up? I got your email. What's that all about?" Dad: "Those are gifts for the kids for Christmas." Me: "That's cool. If you're getting them that, I will see them when the kids open them." Dad: "No, that's for you to get them." Me: "I don't buy for that generation, remember? And I already sent you my contribution to Oma's cruise." Dad: "You need to get stuff for the kids. Don't you want them to look up to you as an uncle?" Me: "Not really. Also, what part of my life suggests to you that they ought to look up to me as any sort of role model? You would be better off telling them to grow up to be rock stars." Dad: "Not the point. Christmas is about the children. If you don't get them this stuff, I won't put your name on the card for Oma." Me: "That's a crappy thing to do, considering I already paid into that." Dad: "Will you get the stuff or not?" Me: "Well, guess my name is not going on the card then. This will cost me more than a month's rent, so you can take this list and grease it up real nice." Dad interrupting: "Calm your jets. This is what they want." Me: "I will get them a token something, but I'm not taking out a loan." Dad: "Fine, just make it something they enjoy." Me: "If what I get doesn't put a giant smile on each and every one of their faces, I will buy you dinner at a steakhouse of your choosing." Dad: "That's the spirit. Talk to you later." So Christmas rolls around and my wife and I have bought not just one but 4 gifts for each of the little ones and wrapped them all beautifully. My dad correctly assumes it's all probably from the dollar store, but it's nicely wrapped and he gives me a look of approval as I place it under the tree. My wife and I schmooze for a bit and then suggest that since we brought several gifts for each of the kids, why don't they open each one before dinner so they have something to do while they wait. Their parents of course agree, as it gives them more of a reason to ignore their kids and talk about them instead, so they send us off to hand out gifts to their kids and Martha is looking especially smug. As they begin to unwrap them, I prepare the cameras as my wife goes for our codes, and I stick around just long enough to immortalize on film the big crap-eating grin on each of the kids' faces as they see what their gift is. Less than 1 minute later, the first blast from the air horn, Tim's gift, can be heard in the hallway, clearly be my wife and I as we make our way to the elevator. I have no idea how much of the bulk pack of silly string, Tammy's gift, or the 36 rainbow pack of off-brand Sharpies, Bubba's gift, ended up on the walls, but I do know that they repainted the place the next month. Whether or not the pile of slap-on bracelets we got for Jane ended up on the wrists and legs of the parents, as they tried to contain the other three, will be left to the imagination, but I like to think that they all ended up in the height of 80s fashion before Boxing Day. I may never know if they opened the rest of their presents, everyone got a copy of each of the other's gifts, you know, for fairness, plus a bunch of gross and mildly inappropriate temporary tattoos. In the confusion, none of them noticed either me or my wife leaving. I'm certain at some point that they did notice the pretty gold envelope addressed to the parents on the tree. Inside was a very pretty card, blank but for the following note. This was a warning shot from off the top of my head. I've got a whole year to get creative for next time. Merry Christmas! I never bought anyone steak dinner, however I enjoyed several more Christmases with my Oma and Dad until they passed away and I stopped seeing that side of the family at all. No mention of this incident or gifts for the kids was ever made again. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am happy for OP that apparently he now lives in peace and does not have to worry about these stupid presents anymore. To be honest, I think in general Christmas has become too commercialized. It's pretty much nowadays just all about presents and people don't even know why we celebrate Christmas anymore in the first place. Either way, let me know in the comments what you think about this story, whether OP went too far or if it was just right. And the next one is titled Monster-in-Law. New here, sorry if formatting is all wrong, little bit of backstory. Installment 1 of probably a billion, I've been married to my husband, the H, for over 11 years. We have 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter, the oldest son from a previous relationship. I had decent relationships with my mother-in-law for the first couple of years of my marriage. Then I learned the hard truth as to why you never work with family. I was working 2 jobs while my husband worked 1 part-time. One of my jobs was the second shift desk clerk at a decent franchised hotel. I had been there a few months when mother-in-law got fired from her job. I made the huge mistake of getting her a job where I worked. Things seemed to go normal until Christmas rolls around. I was excited because I had worked super hard on handmade gifts and bought a Big Dog McStuffins playset for my niece. Could not wait to see their faces. Mother-in-law keeps hemming and hawing every time I ask when we are planning to hold Christmas. My husband has 2 siblings and the majority of us work unconventional schedules. I find out while at work on Christmas that they are holding it then. I was devastated. Mother-in-law comes up with excuses that it was the only time everyone could get together. My husband apologizes because he had only found out an hour before telling me. Fast forward a week, the awesome manager finally gets tired of the GA owner of the hotel and quits on New Year's Eve. Owner comes in later that night and makes me the new manager. I had the most seniority and had only been there since July. My responsibilities as manager is thus hiring, training, scheduling, payroll, accounts receivable and payable, covering any call-ins, getting the breakfast order in for the next week, clearing the front lobby, handling all customer complaints and being on call 24/7 for emergencies, as well as working a minimum of 28 hours a week at the front desk. Also, no one was allowed to work more than 36 hours per week so he could avoid paying healthcare costs. On a good week, I averaged around 50 hours per week. On a bad week, 90 plus hours a week. 3 months into this already hellish job, I discovered that mother-in-law has been trash-talking me to anyone at work she possibly could. She complains that my house is a mess, see the hours worked for the reason, and that I relied on my husband to do everything. He was working 30 hours per week, and she accuses me of not loving my husband and exclaims I only married him for the free childcare. When she starts telling cute stories about 3-year-old at the time son, she refers to him as my grandson and begins telling guests that she is really the manager. She was very careful about most of this until 2 of my coworkers came separately and told me the exact same thing. I felt like she had actually stabbed me in the heart. I could not fire her. If she said those things about me when I thought we were on good terms, imagine the blowback after taking away her income. So I tried to ignore it. The next weekend the hotel is booked solid. I worked the afternoon shift at the front desk and then was back up there at 6 AM to help mother-in-law with the morning rush. Guest comes up to the desk complaining about an issue I know she's lying about because I fixed it personally. Guests want a full refund because the non-existent issue kept her up all night. I apologize for the inconvenience and explain the best I can do is a 10% discount. Mother-in-law pipes up and questions me in front of the guest.
Surely there's something more we can do.
That was the straw that broke this camel's back. I said excuse me to the guest, walked into my office and called the owner, told him I quit and walked out the door. Dear husband confronted her for the first time that day. She denied everything, but he knew she was lying. Stay tuned for more stories because I promise you I have the mother-in-law load. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.